You've heard about strange things happening during the night shift, things that make you question what's real. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 true stories from people who experience the kind of horror that only comes when the world is asleep. I saw the man's face on the security monitor, frozen, pale, and lit by the harsh fluorescent glare, long after I'd watched him leave the store. That's when I realized I wasn't alone on the night shift, and maybe never had been. It was the dead quiet stretch between midnight and dawn at the gas station. That special brand of silence only found in places meant to be busy, but emptied by darkness. The hum of the refrigerators and the drone of the ancient Coke machine were the only comforts. Around 2:30 a.m., a disheveled man in a heavy coat ambled in. Nothing unusual about that. His face was unreadable, his eyes sunken, and his skin had a sickly bluish tint under the lights. He bought a coffee and left as quietly as he'd come, not speaking a word. Half an hour passed before I glanced at the screen in the tiny security office behind the counter. There he was, unmistakable, the same man, standing motionless in the snacks aisle, head turned right toward the camera. My throat went dry. I peered through the front windows, but the aisle was empty. But on camera, he didn't even blink. He just stood, watching. Convincing myself it was a technical glitch, I reset the cameras. The feed lagged, flickered, and then he was gone. Relieved but on edge, I busied myself with stocking shelves. Every 10 minutes or so, compelled by mounting dread, I checked the monitors again. Sometimes all was normal. Sometimes, there he was, always that same spot, his impossibly still body facing the lens, eyes locked on me by way of the screen. I tried to laugh it off, called it exhaustion, maybe just some weird image burn-in. But the footage was recording fresh every time. My supervisor confirmed it during a groggy text exchange. No way the clip could stick like that. I started keeping the doors locked between customers. On my final round before sunrise, the monitors showed an empty aisle, but I heard soft, deliberate, and heavy footsteps. I held my breath. Something brushed past the end of the row, just out of sight, and the bathroom door creaked open by itself, slow as a funeral march. I quit the night shift a week later. Still, sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that blue-lit face staring at me from some monitor, waiting. Always waiting, like a customer who never left. Her name echoed through the empty speakers, though the room had been silent and locked for weeks. I knew immediately whose voice it was. Somehow, the dead were speaking, and on my shift, someone answered. It was just after 3 a.m., the hour when every shadow stretches longer and every breath feels stolen from the dark. The hospital corridors hummed softly, the sterile scent of disinfectant hanging in the cold air. The only voices were the ones inside my head, replaying the night's routine. My feet ached, my eyes burned from the harsh overhead lights, and the worst discomfort was a growing sense that something was silently watching. As I filed charts at the nurse's station, the intercom crackled to life. The static was sharp, almost physical in its intrusion, and through it, I heard a thin, trembling voice saying, "Nurse, please help me." It was Mrs. Fletcher. Her gentle southern accent was unmistakable. The problem was, Mrs. Fletcher had passed away 2 weeks ago in room 207, the very room now lifeless and untouched. I froze, blood pounding in my ears, momentarily paralyzed and unable to respond. After a few seconds of suffocating silence, the voice returned, louder and more desperate. "I need help. Please!" The intercom hissed and popped, and an eerie cold spread up my spine. Against my better judgment, I left the station, grabbing the master key. My hands trembled as I unlocked room 207. The air inside was colder than the corridor, tinged with the sterile chemical odor masking something sour and old. The bed was stripped and bare, the heart monitor dark and silent. But the emergency call button pulsated red with a strange urgency. At the edge of my vision, the shadows seemed to ripple. I thought I caught the faintest hint of her perfume, floral and faint as a distant memory. I pressed the button to reset it, and instantly, the intercom outside roared with static. My breath caught in my throat as the overhead light dimmed briefly, sending the room into an unsettling twilight, and the temperature dropped noticeably, a chill crawling through my bones. When I stepped out, the corridor was empty. Yet the overhead speaker whispered my name, soft and pleading. Why won't anyone come? Heart pounding, I sprinted back to the station, pulled up the security feed, and saw a blurred gray figure sitting upright on the bed in room 207, facing the camera. I requested a daytime transfer first thing the next morning. Some nights, though, when I pass that locked door, I still hear the intercom click and hiss, and wonder who or what is still calling for help in the dead of night. I saw her sitting there, just like always, sipping coffee alone in the far corner booth at midnight, but I was sure I'd been at her funeral that very afternoon. The diner was nearly empty that night, the usual hum of the old neon sign outside flickering lazily against darkening skies. I was wiped from the long day, barely keeping my eyes open as I shuffled plates and refilled coffee cups. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and old grease, the kind of smell that clings to your clothes no matter how many times you wash them. Then, after locking the front door behind the last customer, I glanced up and froze. There she was, my regular Mrs. Harper, with the same light curls, soft smile, tired eyes. Only she was supposed to be gone. Earlier that day, the small town had said its goodbyes. I'd been there, standing among the mourners, watching her casket lower gently into the ground behind pale autumn leaves. Yet now, here she was again, ordering her usual black coffee and half a blueberry pie, as if she'd returned from some unsettling detour. As I approached, my hands trembled slightly, tasting the bitter sting of unease. I said hello softly, but the booth was empty. The chair swayed slightly, like it had just been vacated. A cold draft snuck through the cracked window beside it, stirring the napkins on the table like restless whispers. I checked the entire diner, my breath quickening. No sign of anyone else, just the dull crackle of the jukebox playing forgotten classics and the tick-tock of the wall clock counting down to dawn. The coffee cup at the booth was still warm, steam rising in delicate spirals, but the seat was empty and cold. Later, when I asked the cook about it, he just shook his head and said, "Sometimes, the last guest never really leaves." That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched from the corner where she'd sat, the kind of watching that doesn't blink or look away. I left the diner an hour early, heart pounding under the weight of something unseen. Since then, some nights when the rain taps the windows and the empty booths fade into shadows, I swear I hear the soft scrape of a chair and the faint clink of a coffee cup left untouched. Sometimes, the dead don't say goodbye. They just keep coming back for one last cup.